Hailing from the nation of poets, Somalian-American Boyah J. Farah wields a masterful pen of his rich life experiences through various publications. From September 6, Boyah introduced America Made Me a Black Man to the world, traversing the extremes of war in Somalia and the nuances of racism in America. Boyah guides the reader through universal lessons many of us can resonate with, a reflective and honest love for the American dream. First of all, thank you so much, Boyah, for coming on to the For Your Reference podcast. Also, congratulations on a brilliant, brilliant book, and welcome. We're very excited. We've read the book, and we're very excited to discuss it with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. For you to read you read my book, it's wonderful. That's a writer's dream.
Right. So America Made Me a Black Man is such a resonating title. Majority of Africans migrating for one reason or another will quickly find out that they're Black. So, and the weight of what that means. So when you're writing this, the title of the writing come fast?
The writing came first. And after I got that out, then the title came after.
Nice. There's a consistent push and pull between the extreme witnessing the atrocities of war to the almost invisible nuances in systemic racism in America. Was this a conscious balance, or did you just let it flow naturally?
I let it flow naturally. Normally, when you witness war or you witness tragedies in that magnitude, your mind is always tense back that nothing can bother you after you saw that. But racism is basically seeps into your heart, your liver, your kidneys. It drives you crazy. I think racism is the cousin of death, not just a cousin of death, but a cousin of agonizing death. And so it was natural for me to look at the war and say, this is actually 10 times worse. Racism is much more worse than war, from my experience. I've seen a lot of war in my life, a lot of death in my life.
I think it's also like with war, it's like tantamountly, this is exactly what it is. And I think with racism, especially in a lot of Western countries, someone can make a comment about, like a white person being like, my skin's darker than you. It's like, hang on, is that okay? Like, is that right?
Those little comments, basically they without you noticing it, it's like a bullet. You're carrying so many bullets, and all those little comments, all the harassment, all the all my interaction with America basically broke me down, and I never thought anybody can break me down after I've seen war and refugee camp and running away from Somalia. I mean, it's a tragic place when you think about what has been happening in the last 20 years or 30 years. So for me, I never really thought that I'll discover that in America, and then I just had to put it down and write it, and so the world can see what that racism is much more worse and much more dangerous, and is generational. Your legacy, your kids will inherit it. But war is not generational. You witness death. I witnessed death 1991, 92, and I buried them, and that was it. I think about them sometimes, but they don't follow me around. But racism does.
Right. So I can imagine while writing through this process, what was the moment you realized all these experiences were actually racist?
You're not really an American until you actually hit the workforce. I was not really American when I was in high school. I was not really American when I was in college. I had cars, I had a good life. At least, better than where I came from. I had a little Honda Civic. I had a job, I had a place. It was beautiful. I listened to hip hop, reggae. It was good. Those little things of cops stopping you, being profiled. Those little things. I was too young and too naive to understand that one day will break me down. When I really realized that racism is incredibly dangerous is when you hit the workforce and you see yourself bouncing from one job to another and you don't really know why, and you train a white worker who's less educated than you are, and he'll become your boss, and you have to actually do his job knowing that the guy doesn't qualify, and that happened to me so many times, and that puts you in a space of depression and talking to yourself, and you just don't know what to do. So, it's a very tragic place to be, knowing that you are less of a human being than white people who are the majority of this country.
Yeah, and I think part of what makes these systems thrive is because one person made it, that means everyone's supposed to make it without realizing it's set up to be the good Black person. So like everyone else is terrible, and that's why you made it, because you're the best and you've done above and beyond what was expected of you.
Yes, and as an African who, when Barack Obama became a president, I voted for him, I campaigned for him. I was like, this is it. Barack Obama is going to be president. I start wearing red tie.
Racism is over. Racism is over.
I thought it was going to be over. In fact, it has gotten worse. Racism became incredibly visible after Barack Obama. Visible at the workplace, visible driving on the American highways, visible everywhere. So it was actually, the country became much more dangerous for people like me. And because Africans, we came from, we have a different culture, we have a different country. We tend not to know what African Americans go through until we actually become ourselves an African American.
And I think it's funny to say spoiler because it's literally your life. But for those that are interested to read the book, I'm not going to spoil it, so to say. But you do touch on the differences of experiences of Black people. It's not just one Black experience. And that really comes back to the strength of the title of your book.
Thank you. Thank you. I really wanted to, I really wanted to, my own mother told me not to write this book. A lot of people, because you're from Africa, you're supposed to appreciate America. You're supposed to like, oh my God, you came from Somalia, aren't you lucky? I mean, how dare you write a book like this? And I can understand my mother. She hasn't been assimilated into this country. She never learned the language. So for her, when we were in the refugee camp, the only country that allowed us was America. For her, that is significant. So she's like, if you're going to write anything about America, you got to say America, love, 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 the best country in the world. Don't say anything negative about America. But if we want America to confront herself in the mirror, then a story like this has to be told. And so I had to, go opposite than what my mother told me. So I can tell America what it has been doing to Black people, the last 400 years, and it's continuing to do it. So hopefully books like this can help.
And I think what I really love about the book is you talk about having a love for America, but it's a very pragmatic sort of love. And I think that's how you get to a real deep level of love, when you're actually looking at it and saying, hey, this isn't okay. Like this could be better. So when you talk about the love for the American dream, was it out of romance or was it out of necessity for survival?
I'm a nomad. I belong to my father. I'm my father's son. My father said to me, when you are in someone else's house, you honor that person.
Yeah.
So I thought America honored me as being a guest. And I've always thought that driving on the American highway, I even wrote a story about a lady who had my bike. I don't want to spoil the story, but that's a true story, And I never thought, I'm a guest. Americans love me. They allow me into this country. I love America. I think I love America more than mega people or Trump people, because, I see America for what it is. In order for me to tell, there's not going to be any growth without people like us telling the truth to America and making sure America looks at herself in the mirror. So I really wrote this book from a place of, it's almost a love letter, metaphorically, to America, telling the truth about America, so it can know that what the Black children have been, saying that about America is true. Because I have no, I love America. I came into this country chasing home, chasing a country, chasing a place to belong, and I was chasing American dream. I love the green grass. Everything about America was heaven. I thought I was in heaven. But then
Mhm.
for me to discover what I discover, not just to discover what I discover, but to write about it, it's something significant.
Yeah, so I think part of me when I was reading the book and going through some of the or reading through some of the experiences you had, there were moments so starkingly racist that you didn't really see it that way. And I was continuously in my mind just going, oh my God, this is so bizarre that you would think that, you're young, you're taking in a moment, you're grateful to be there, like you said. So do you ever get like flashbacks or moments where you think like, oh my God, I would have handled this so differently? Or even in coming up experiences on how you'd handle such situations now?
Yes, there's a lot of flashbacks in my life because, like I said, once I became an American and I start working and I see the cries of the people who look like me, highly educated human beings that cried in my office, in my everywhere. I've yet to see anyone happy who looks like me. Then you tend to think about all the little things that happened to me in my life that I actually overlooked because I was so grateful to be not just to be in America, to be alive
Yeah.
and to be driving on
Right.
American highways. That's a significant thing. So those of us who survive war, we look at that experience as something more significant than anything else in life. But what I have discovered is racism is worse than war because war is temporary. Racism is generational.
That actually answers one of the questions that I had while I was reading the book, because you talk about, trying to make sure that your brothers aren't growing up too fast, and even like rap music, right? Even though in a lot of hip hop, it's an expression. You talk about writing as an expression, and hip hop is an expression to the current state or the contemporary time in America. But you felt the need to pace that sort of learning with your brothers, even though on the other hand, you've experienced war. And I thought that was quite an interesting sort of dynamic that you introduced in the book.
Thank you. Yeah, because my father, may he rest in peace, told me that I'm the son in the family.
Mm.
And so like I've always looked at my life as a father figure, guide them, make sure they don't get in trouble. And I thought their minds are not ready to consume or to listen to hip hop, because I feel like the young rappers are writing about, they're like reporters from their hood, just like I could be a reporter from my village when there's war.
Mm.
Some of the parts that I wrote about, there's a guy named Omar. You know, Omar is still alive. What I'm writing about is what we saw. So I thought Tupac and all these other young Prodigy and Wu-Tangs, they were talking about their hood, their experience. So I look at them as reporters from their hood. But I didn't think that my brothers were their minds were there to understand that they're writing about their experiences. I didn't want them to take in exactly what they're saying and become destructive. So I wanted to separate their growth from what I have been exposed to in terms of hip hop.
So what would you say the updated version of the American dream is?
What's the American dream? You said
Yeah.
the American dream. Um, I don't. For coming to this country, the American dream was big to me.
Mm.
The American dream is something significant. You could do whatever the hell you want. Excuse my language. But in terms of becoming an American myself, the American dream is something different. I think for a black child, the black child has to work harder, and the chances of a black child, assuming that space, it is not as easy as a white child. Put it
Yeah.
that way. And black child has to be 10 times better. Look at Barack Obama. Nothing came out of his life, no negative news, and still he had a hard time. Govern. You seen what happened even when he left. Something awful came out after him.
Yeah.
So I think it's, for me, it's in a gray area. It's not as clear as it was before coming to this country. And I think like if someone coming from Africa, and they might be easier because they don't have all these, they haven't been exposed to the real America. But some child who is born in America, I think it's harder for an African American child to believe before you do anything else. You got to believe, right? To believe that they can actually compete and work and become that, success, African success, part of the American dream. It's harder. So I don't know if I can answer this question, but for me, it's like, it's not as before. I wish you could answer this question. 1993, when I came in, I wanted to be a doctor. And you can still be a doctor, but the challenges are there, and you have to, you got to recognize it and prepare your soul. The challenges are greater.
I think part of it is not necessarily a united dream, right? There's the dream that's sold in Hollywood. There's the dream that's showed on the screen. But I think what we start to realize when they talk about equality and justice for all, they mean whoever the forefathers were and everyone that looked like that, for all of the white people, right? And I think for everyone else that isn't white in America, everyone else that is struggling is starting to wake up to the fact that all of these structures and all of these systems in place were never for us. You know what I mean? So maybe it's fragments of a different dream, because this dream is for a very particular set of people, and we're just feeding into that machine. And you talk about that in your workplace. You're constantly having to fill the gaps of mediocrity. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, for an African-born American like me, it took me 30 years to realize that. And also the gratitude kind of grays. It kind of blinds you from seeing the truth, So it took me like 29 years to be exact to know that what you just said is real. It is real. It might not be written in the books, but there's a two system here. One for the whites, one for the blacks.
Yeah.
And the one for the blacks, in my culture, you tell people, how you feel about them. So I really thought that America would tell me straight up, this is how we feel about you, man. I never thought that someone will hide and try to destroy me. And, because when I was in my grandmother, you knew exactly where the water well is, the herds, the camels, the land that you belong to, exactly where your enemy is. Then if you have to go to war, you can go to war. And if there's peace, there's peace. There's no, secret about how people live. But in America, they don't tell you any of that until it's too late, until you go into depression or get, die of COVID-19 because of so much stress. And if you don't have a job in this country, there's no way you can live. Because you can't afford apartment, you can't afford home, you cannot maintain a relationship. It's a self-destructing lifestyle. And I'm being honest with that. I'm not hiding. It's being honest.
But then you also have the term like missing white woman syndrome. Like you see where the importance is or what people value in America based on what gets media attention. There are places in America at the moment that don't have safe drinking water indefinitely, right? And that's because they're 80% black. So no one really wants to talk about it. Even major news outlets aren't talking about it right now. And it's how much do we let other people care? You know what I mean? And it really, what I thought was really interesting, and even just talking through this interview as well, you really are the conduit between, your roots in Africa and also in America, because you're here trying to say, hey, I love you, America. I need you to love me back. But also at the same time, because of cultural, even with your mom, like you can't say shit because you should be grateful to be here. So how can you say, treat me better when you should be grateful in the first place? It's something that is very compelling, and I really enjoyed reading through the book.
Thank you. I mean, even my white friends who are highly educated tell me that you wrote that book? Really? Weren't you in a refugee camp? Like, how dare you? You know, so it's almost as if you have absolutely no voice, that you should be so grateful.
Yeah.
You know, like there's nothing, this country, if someone's gonna talk, you know, write a critical book like this, it's gotta be an African Americans, because you expect them. But you're different. You're African, you know, you're special, you know, and that is not true. You know, that is not true. I am no special than Derek, you know, and what happened to Derek awaited me, and I knew it. And he, you know, so, and it's gonna happen to every 99% of the people, unless you comply with the system and get used to, you know, that's just the way it is. But we got to challenge it, and that's the reason why I wrote this book. I wanted to make sure that America, I love you, reciprocate the love. Black people love you, reciprocate the love. Black people build this country. They continue to represent this country in every field, sports, music. You know, Black people are visible. Acknowledge their pain. Acknowledge us, and create a system that's desirable for all the American children, not just for some. And that is the voice with which I wrote this book from.
I think part of the problem is, like, you can have your Black pain, but it needs to be marketable for white Hollywood. It needs to be marketable for white academia. And if you are speaking your pain and we're not profiting off it, and the lens is decentering whiteness, then what am I supposed to do with that? I want, you know, like, if you think about, like, in the 90s, all of the African films, but they're all white actors. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they need to be at the center. And obviously they talk about, like, the white savior sort of trope. Like, we need to get in on your pain so we can market off it. So if you're speaking with your full chest and we're not there and you're aiming it at us, what do we get out of it, right?
Yeah, you said it right. But the Black people are not minority. We're not, you know. So I didn't write this book from a position of minority. I wrote this book from a position of, I am a human being who's equal to you. I love you. Love me back. Let's make this country better. And that's what every Black, you know, person in America wants. You know, Black people don't hate anyone, but we want to make sure that our voices are heard, and we're equal in the workplace, in Hollywood, telling our stories. And you know, it's only going to get better if that is recognized.
It was interesting reading the book, because we were reading it obviously separately but together at the same time. And there was a moment that we had a little, like, discussion, because, you know, the whole notion of, when you're in Africa, you're just African. But then as soon as you get inserted into, like, a Western country like America or Australia, that's when the lens of Blackness, like, is applied.
Yeah, because they tell you, you know, when I as a writer, I always think about show, don't tell. And America shows you. It does not tell you that you're Black, but it shows you that you're Black. And you know, when you're shown again and again and again, then ultimately you will capitulate and you will know your place.
Yeah.
You know, so without even talking about it, you'll just know it. And that's from a cultural, because I came to this country as a teenager, so I knew my culture. My father told me, even in the book I write about, that I am the son. There's no hierarchy. And you look a person in the eyes and tell them how you feel, and they got to respect you. You have to earn your respect. And so, because I've already had a culture, you know, a set of culture inside of me, I just couldn't do but resist. And the more I resist, the more I became depressed, the more that I go into that space of no return. And so and that is hard to be in that space where you know for sure you're not coming back because everything around you is destroyed. No job, none of that. Well, what happens? And then you're just gonna die alone. And a lot, and it's sad to say that, but it's true. It is true. It is racism is evil. It's something that should be challenged, and all of us should talk about this and confront it. And war is better. And I'm not saying that lightly because I'm a product of war and I hate war. And a lot of my childhood friends died. Omar, who I write about in the book, is alive, and sometimes we talk to each other. Actually, he lives in Australia, is where he lives now, and so sometimes we talk about it. And to this day, 30 years ago, it's still vivid in our head what we have seen. So war is bad, but he doesn't lose sleep over that. I don't lose sleep over that. But racism, will drive you not to sleep. And so that's the reason why I said racism is 10 times worse, should be eradicated.
In another interview, you mentioned that Rambo was your favorite film before the war. What would be your favorite film now?
My favorite film now is, I haven't been watching films for a while, but there's a film that I like, Love Jones. Love Jones is my ultimate favorite.
A little bit of Black Joy, right?
Yes, Love Jones is my ultimate favorite. But in the war, all of us, Rambo has done so much destruction in the world, especially third world countries. I hate it, but at the same time, it's part of my experience because I've seen young people who mimicked Rambo in my childhood who died. So even though I hate the film now, but as a child I loved it, and as a child I loved the kids who mimicked Rambo because that was in the moment I wanted to be. I wanted to defend my family. I wanted to make sure that I become a fighter that's celebrated because that's what was good at that particular moment. But when you come to a peaceful place and you become educated and you get to read that's when you get to see the destructiveness of Hollywood in the poor countries. So now I can say I hate it, but again, it's part of my experience. So when I think about it in terms of those young boys carrying machine guns and fighting in the war. It's a very tragic story.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, it's like there's entertainment, but if you're speaking on experiences, there needs to be some sort of custodianship of understanding it's not just for the popcorn sort of thriller. Like people have lived through this stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard to understand war through film.
Yeah,
it's not the same. In the film, it's like you enjoy it and you come out and you talk about it. In war, you don't talk about it. Just get to see your best friend shred into pieces, and you have to pick up limbs and bury them. And then you have to forget about them quickly because you have no time to moan, to grieve. There's no grieving moment in the war zone. You have to move on, and you cannot show tears when you're a boy. So that has been actually a blessing and a curse because sometimes you need tears to release. So in the last 30 years I've been living here, sometimes I do want to cry over this evilness of racism, but I cannot because my culture is not to cry.
Well, you can always call us. We can have a cry together if you want. We can have like a crying party and just have a list of things we cry about. But thank you so much for your time. And you've spoke about it throughout this interview as well. What I really appreciated about this book, there are certain points that people hit when they talk about racism. But what I really appreciated, and not that I wasn't expecting, but you talked about physical health and how racism physically, can affect you. So I really appreciated that. Do you have any sort of final thoughts?
I think it's an essential read for anyone and everyone who wants to just peel the veneer that's been set up, that you would think that, oh, they voted for Barack Obama, racism is fixed. Anyone who thinks that, for a lot of the Africans, migrants who out there who experience such a stark contrast, be it in culture or even identity, once they find themselves in a majority populated white country, you get all these experiences laid out in such a beautiful way. And I think it just puts a lot of words, at least for me, that either I was thinking, but I didn't know how to point out. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. Thank you. It's essential and it's needed. And I'm glad
Thank you.
yeah, and I'm glad that when, you might have had voices telling you that, oh, don't write it, just be appreciative. And I think that's when we actually fail as a culture and as a people, where we say nothing, we're appreciative because we've given the bare minimum. And we deserve better, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And I love that.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted to give a shout out to Alicia Brooks. She's the one actually who told me I was writing this for therapy, for me. Like it was like I had to get it out. Writers like me write about things that hurt them. And so I write about racism, I write about war, American culture, Somali culture, African culture. And I must give a shout out to Alicia Brooks, my agent, who actually asked me, hey, I need to know what you're writing about this, and please send it to me. And so shout out to Alicia Brooks, for encouraging me and believing in me and telling me, hey, this is the book, and now I am proud that you read the book. This is my second interview. Thank you for inviting me. Really, I enjoy this interview. Really, I do.
Oh,
and I want to see every Black child living in the West, Europe, America, to read, so they know that they can speak up. The human beings equal to any other human being. That's my wish, is to make sure this book reaches to every single student, so they can understand that they came from a place of love. They have culture. They're the sun. So
all the way in Australia, we're here by your side. We're ready to fight with you. We're ready to cry with you. We're ready to laugh with you and fall in love and love Jones. Like, we're ready to have a great time with you, boy. And we've had a great time today.
Thank you. So
do you want to, obviously, America Made Me a Black Man is now available. Do you want to share your social media or where people can find you?
Yes, I have Twitter, I have Instagram, I have Facebook. I think the book came out a couple of days ago in the UK. So basically, Google will do the right thing. It's at Target in America. It's at Walmart in America. It's Barnes and Nobles in America. It's it's everywhere in America. And I believe in destiny. Destiny, it is destined. I blame everything on destiny. And it is destined for this book to come out, and it's destined that we speak. So it's, thank you, really.
Congratulations again on your book, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to meet you both. I didn't get your name. Do you mind if I ask your name? You didn't tell me your names.
Oh,
I'm OT and
Katie.
Yeah.
Okay. Pleasure to meet you both. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you here. And I think everyone go out, buy the book. It's an essential read.